So since I don't normally teach reading, I actually teach math and social skills to my students. I'm just going to kind of walk you through what a reading lesson would look like if I were to teach it to my students. So if I was working with my students, they would be my first graders is what this lesson is based off of, and I would be having them look at and review setting, characters, and main events, which you can see on my whiteboard behind me. So I would start my lesson off by having them look at the book Wemberly Worried, and I would have them do a picture walk, look at the cover, look at the back cover, and a short picture walk of just going through each page. We're not reading the words, we're just looking at the pictures. They may point out a sight word that they know. They may point out something they see in the picture that they can relate to. Just something to get them thinking about the story before I introduce the skill that I want them to work on and learn about. After taking a picture walk, I might ask them to talk about the setting and turn and talk to one another. And with setting, I just want them to talk about what they think it means and how they might apply it to the story that they just looked at through the picture walk. After letting them turn and talk, that allows me to look at each individual student and listen to their conversations. We would focus back on me and then return and look at characters. After they look at characters, they would again turn and talk based off of what they think it means to look at characters, and then they would also relate it again back to Wemberly Worried. After the turn and talk for a minute or so, we'll have them turn back to me and we'll talk about main events, and they'll again turn and talk with their partner about what main events they think might happen based off of the pictures they just looked at in their story. After reading the story, or after discussing the story and their predictions, I will actually go through each piece and talking about how setting is related to the time the story is taking place. So maybe it's morning or afternoon or evening, and it might also be the actual place, like at their house or at school. And after we've reviewed that, we're actually going to do a hand motion to help my kids associate setting. So every time they hear the word setting, they'll know to make their hands like this, like they're spreading it across the land, setting. Then we'll talk about characters, and we'll do the same thing. Characters are people, they can be animals, but they're all the people that are in the story. And with characters, we'll also learn a hand signal, and they'll learn like people or animals walking. So that will be their hand signal. Every time they hear characters, they can associate with that. And main events would be like 1, 2, 3, you're pointing, because main events are the different things that progress throughout the story, such as what happened first, what happened second, what happened third, and so on and so forth. After the students have learned the hand signals and what they all mean, we'd quick review the hand signals. What is setting? What is characters? And what is main events? After that, we would start reading the story, Wemberly Worried. And as we go through and we read every page or so, we will pause, and I can either ask a comprehension question, such as, who are the characters we've read about so far? What has happened on this page? What do you think is going to happen next? And I would do that throughout the book. Every page or so, again, turn, ask. I can have them talk to me, or I can have them do a turn and talk, kind of depending on what is needed at that moment. About halfway through the book, I would have them pause, and we would do a more deeper reflection on, so far, what is the setting? And again, do our hand motion. And they can tell me that the setting is currently happened both at school and at home in the case of this book. The characters that they would mention at this point when we would talk about characters again would be Wemberly, her parents, her classmates. Some are mentioned by name, some are not, so again, if they can at least mention classmates. And then we would talk about any events that have happened so far, and again, we would use our 1, 2, 3 point hand signal so they know main events. And with that, they can talk about so far about how she's been worried to go to school. She worries about everything before she goes to bed. She worries about leaving her parents when she goes outside or goes to school. Main events such as that. Again, after a main review about halfway through the book, we would do we would continue on with every page or so, pausing, asking a comprehension question, turn and talk with your partner, share with the whole group, kind of varying it up per page. After we finish the book, students will receive a worksheet that looks like this. And at the top, they'll get a pencil and they'll put their name, and then they'll set the pencil down on the table in front of them. After the pencil is on the table in front of them, they will read the word setting on the top of the first box, and we will review the setting of the story now that the story is done. And once we've determined one general setting, which most of the story in this case takes place at school, they'll get a box of crayons. I'll set it in the center of the table, and they will get the opportunity to take their crayons, draw, and when the crayons are done, they go back in the box so I can remove them and eliminate the distraction. Then, after we've had a discussion about characters, we can go back and we can put the crayon bucket on the table. Again, draw 1 or 2 characters, because at first grade, 1 or 2 is just enough to understand if they understand what a character is and who the characters are in the story. Again, crayons go back in the bucket, remove the bucket, and then we go back and review main events. We'll talk about 2 or 3 big ones in the story, and then I will ask them to each draw 1, because it's just 1 box, and because with first grade level and the students that I work with, that's where they're at. That's where I know I'm going to get the most quality work from to determine if they understand what main events are and are able to relate it to the story. After we are done with the worksheet, they'll turn it into me, put all the crayons in the bucket. I'm planning on using this worksheet later in the week, where we can review and compare to other stories we read to talk about setting, characters, and main events. Before we're officially done with the lesson, though, we will review the hand signals and what setting, characters, and main events mean. So we would again say settings and describe that they're a place or a time. Characters are people or animals. Main events are the things that happen throughout the story. So the students will have a good, solid base to build on as they learn this concept in kindergarten. We're now reviewing it again in first grade, and they're re-establishing the foundation on what they need throughout the rest of the school year to build on with this. I would then, be able to check for understanding with the students, and if something is not quite clicking, we can re-review in more depth. And again, we would talk about this skill, not just for one day. This is a skill that my curriculum and my district wants us to review constantly throughout the year and relate to just about every story we read. So that would be something, again, we would go back and relate to. I'm going to just show kind of where I'm sitting. So this is kind of where the table is, and you can see it's off to the side. We eliminate any distractions. It helps keep the kids focused right at me because there's a wall right behind me and nothing else to distract them. So overall, that's kind of where my lesson is at. It's unfortunate that I can't teach this to my students, as my focus teaching partner does the reading portion and I do the math portion, but kind of what I would do if I was teaching reading to my kids.